is a very challenging thing to do because moon is not really designed like an Earth for us to live there. But it is a treasure chest for a lot of learning and evolution because, first of all, the lunar regolith is very abundant.
Explain the lunar regolith?
Yeah, so regolith pretty much means that lunar sand, you can say lunar soil, right?
Okay.
So regolith is the term that we use in our rocketry, and it has a little bit of a deeper connotation to it. Based on what I have understood is that the minerals that we have on moon is not available on Earth. And if we can start harnessing those minerals and resources, then it's going to actually enable us to create a technology that can help us to go to Mars.
Welcome back, listener. Thanks for joining us again. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to like, review, share, rate, do all the good stuff when you get a chance. And I want to thank the returning listener for sharing to begin with. That's how we have been growing the last 4 years. If you are so inclined, you so wish to, feel free to go to our website as well, where you can see our past conversations since May 2020 with all kinds of people all around the world. And again, if you're inclined to help with the cause, we're all doing this, giving our time, including our guests. You can go to the donate page as well and do all the good stuff there if you'd like. So thank you again for joining us. Today we have another special guest, and her name is Shehnaz Soni. Shehnaz thinks she is living the adventurous life of a Star Trek cadet where science fiction intersects reality. Her current position as an aerospace engineer for NASA, combined with her passion to serve humanity with her ancient wisdom, enables her to converge science with innovative technology to honor our multidimensional existence. Shehnaz has worked as a rocket scientist for both Boeing and NASA. She is currently working with NASA as a senior system engineer for the Artemis project. She and her cutting-edge team are working towards the unprecedented human landing system. When ready to launch, this system will bridge mankind with a long-term presence on the moon and ultimately on Mars. Shehnaz is the author of The Quantum Being, a self-sustaining and magnificent human craft, which seamlessly weaves together science, spirituality, and ancient wisdom. She begins by introducing the mind-bending concepts of quantum mechanics, where atoms dance and particles define conventional rules. She skillfully translates these scientific notions into relatable and accessible ideas, making the quantum world accessible even to novice readers. You can find her at her website, shehnazsoni.com. We'll put that in the show notes, including her book. Welcome to the show, Shehnaz.
Thank you, Luciano. I'm excited to see what we converge on today and what type of quantum collapse we create in our transformation.
Quantum collapse. You were thinking way too highly of me, but let's see what we can do.
Let's just go for it, right? Why not?
Well, okay, so let's get us started with something. So how many times have I ever said or learned or heard from somebody else, I'm not a rocket scientist. Or dude, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do it. And I'm finally, at my age, face to face with somebody who is actually a rocket scientist. Look at that. I flubbed the first time I said rocket scientist. Go figure. All this practicing for naught. What? So I read a little bit in your bio, but tell us from your words, what is a rocket scientist?
So rocket scientist means that someone who can understand the rocket to the extent that they can, they've worked on different aspects of their design. Like me being a software engineer, you have to understand the bits and bytes and how the entire avionics of the rocket works and how avionics is like a brain of the rocket, right? And that's what makes everything happen. And the very fact that for over 20 years, I've been in the industry of rocket and missiles, working in different capacity, but mostly testing it or writing codes for it, or making sure that everybody talks to everybody, all the boxes, or white box or a black box, and all of these terminologies we use, it just makes you a little bit more aware of the entire rocket and how it works, the idiosyncrasies of it. So that's why I am comfortable giving myself that label, partly because I've been into different roles where I understood different aspects of it, because I love learning. And if I'm going to do something, I wanted to do it from different perspective. And I was very fortunate that every 2 to 3 years, I would change my role so that I can do something completely different, which gave me a lot of hands-on experience in different aspects of the rocket. So rocket scientist to me is a very general term, but generally it means that someone who understands the science and has been in different capacity to understand it.
You are working on a human landing system. That's something you and I haven't chatted about yet. But explain that too, again, to create the context.
Sure. So
Go.
it's an interesting, right. So human landing system actually means that a craft that's going to land human on, in this particular context, the dark side of the moon, because that's where we're starting as our first landed mission, which is going to happen in 2026 right now. And it's going to be a woman that's going to do first and then the man.
Mhm.
And so two people are going to go and live for almost a week on the dark side of the moon. So that's the Artemis 3 mission. And that's where I'm participating in that mission and then all the other mission following that.
So when you say a couple, a man and a woman, are we talking about scientists, astronauts, or lay people?
Astronauts, yes.
Astronauts. Okay.
But they deliberately wanted women to walk on the moon this time first, because of the very fact that the man has already done it. So it's kind of like changing a paradigm. And
Sure.
Artemis actually is a representation of the feminine energy, right? Because
Mm.
Apollo was the masculine. So it's like a twin brother and twin sister thing going on here. So Artemis, so it's interesting when I really look at all the names that NASA uses or even SpaceX uses, they have a lot of direct connection with their, Greek mythology or the history or the god or the Egyptian goddess and gods. And like, it's very interesting how it's used. Like, it's almost like it's like, it's like they're aware of the ancient wisdom and they're using it.
Mm. So we learned about that when we were reading Diana Pasulka's first book, American Cosmic, and she explained.
Mm.
I think it was she explaining her actual testimony, like what she saw on the rockets themselves. That she saw Latin inscriptions on a lot of these rockets, and so she started to ask questions. So it folds right into what you just explained. Uh, so what? It's funny. I had a note here and right here. So why don't we go? Why don't we dive head first? I wasn't expecting to ask this so early. You said in another interview there is an intervention of star beings every time that there is a rocket launch. Do you remember saying that?
So it's interesting because, like people say that, of course, when we decide to launch a rocket, we're always looking at the weather and looking at a whole bunch of different variables that can interfere with the launch of the rocket. And of course, even then, we scrub so many launches, right? So it's pretty obvious that you can't plan for it to the point where it can always go right. There are lots of variables in the equation. But one thing that I've also noticed is that there are times that in the morning of the launch of the rocket, they say that the weather is not looking good and therefore we probably will have to scrub it. And then in 3 hours, the entire everything changes and then they're able to launch it. So I've seen it both ways, right? I've seen it reverse in both ways. And I have had engineers come to me and say that they were seeing crafts right at the launch site that moved in ways that nothing can move, at least nothing that is designed by human can move with the speed that it was moving. Or there were certain motion that they were doing that the craft is not capable of doing. So I had people actually come to me and say those things. So the point of the story is that we have data that shows that there is an intervention. We have a data that shows that not only that that there's an intervention that's invisible, but there's intervention that's visible. Like there are crafts like lurking around right at the launch site when these things are happening. There are times we have launched when we are testing to kind of make sure that we can do certain thing and things happens that's just completely unexplainable, when we were doing the missile testing for the target. So my philosophy is based on years and years of hearing these type of story is that because I do believe that everything happens for a reason and everything that happens has also a reason. You see, there's two different distinction there. So it's all about you know, making sense out of these information. And I say that the reason when we do, like when we blasted the atomic bomb, right? When we do launch a rocket, whenever we do anything that is going to take us into that projectile motion, we are interfering, not, we're interfering at the larger level, right? I mean, every single action that as a human we take, we are interfering with someone, right? But when you're doing something as big as rocket launches, then you are interfering with all there is in existence at the larger level. So there are beings, definitely, I've always believed that there has been intelligence other than human, right? There's intelligence in different form and in different dimension and in different places. This intelligence has its way of showing up in your life depending on what they're going to get from it. So whenever we do something as big as rocket launches, then we are interfering with these intelligence at the level where it changes the shape of humanity, the shape of our history and our future, and also their future.
So you said depending on what they get from it. So the non-human intelligence, what do you think they want to? What are they seeking when they're hanging around a pre-rocket launch?
I think
What?
that I think that every single time when we're launching, of course, we all always have an agenda. Like everybody has an agenda, we have an
Sure.
agenda, right?
Yeah.
So whatever that agenda is, it's kind of like a Jacob's ladder, right? Because we take that step and then we have another step afterwards. So when we're going to initiate something like Artemis 1 launch, which happened with the Space Launch System rocket, that is like putting a first break in building a big giant house. So when you're about to do something, it has a huge agenda tied to it. It has a huge intention tied to it. Now that intention is moon colonization, Mars colonization. So then it is connected with, because the time does matter in terms of when we are showing up for each other to trace each other into the material existence. So therefore, it's important that when something like that is going to happen, it has to be placed in a specific position so it can align with all the other synchronicities that needs to happen. So it kind of goes into like looking glass technology. Like you're looking at everything. Like if you look at holographic fractal reality and you see one input, right? And then how that creates the web of all these things, right? So what I'm saying is that an intelligent being has already seen the outcome of what we're about to do.
They've already seen it because they've already lived it.
Because first of all, they already have a technology to see that. When you watch, I mean, most of the sci-fi movie gives you a very good idea on how perception and time and experience and all of that becomes relative, because when you really start going into depth of all of these events, for the most part, what we think is really has happened to us and the continuity of it is only a perception. So when you really go into that aspect of existence, then for intelligent being to pretty much know or understand more than we know is kind of a no-brainer. And that's why, yes, knowing what it is and knowing what it is not, that type of interference does occur because it has impacts that goes beyond our comprehension.
So to bring it to what people in quote unquote in the office see. So you talked about you mentioned the other engineers have seen this. Are you an anomaly in your thoughts on what these things might be? Or are there others other engineers who share these thoughts with you?
I think I'm definitely the anomaly, but not just in my engineering world. I'm the anomaly in every aspect of my life. When I really, like wherever I go, I definitely feel like an anomaly. Like it's almost like, for whatever reason, I was born with being the pattern buster, being someone who does not represent any kind of norm whatsoever.
So maybe we can just touch upon that too, because I know that to be true with your story. You grew up in Pakistan, and
Yes.
you had I'm going to say peculiar, but that's through the lens of a Westerner, right? But why don't I have you tell the story? So you grew up there. Give us a quick trajectory growing up there to how you became not a rocket scientist, but an engineer at least.
Yeah, so like I
It's a long
started out,
story.
let's take some baby steps, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
started out in, as soon as I become aware of my consciousness, and then I realized that, wow, holy shit, I mean, this is like so dense. And then I have all these family members, everybody's following a cult, and everybody goes to the mosque, everybody prays, 5 times a day. There's like this method to madness that everybody does. And whenever I ask any kind of question, I truly don't get any satisfactory answer. And then I see that it's very patriarchal. The men pretty much in every household runs the show. The women are mostly unhappy. I'm seeing all these patterns and I'm like, what the hell? And I wanted to solve all these patterns, but I wanted to understand some of my own personal quest. And I did not go anywhere, no matter how much I tried. So then I started thinking that I'm going to have to figure this out. And therefore, I put myself into becoming a bookworm because I became a very studious girl. And that led me to become valedictorian. But I also learned one of the key things about the culture in Karachi, that anybody who spoke English, they were highly regarded. So I knew
Mhm.
that English is a powerful language and I need to learn that. So that was in my bucket list, but I didn't know how to do it because I went to Urdu medium school. So but I prayed for it, right? So I had this, so I'm basically collecting my tools, right? I know that English is something I need to learn. I don't have the platform for it, but I prayed for it. I am doing my best by being very, very studious, even though my dad says no, no, no. I'm like, this is my saving grace. And then when I become a valedictorian, it actually helped me partly because when my first husband came looking for girls, 7 girls, and then I was the fifth one. And when he interviewed me, and in the interview, when he was looking for a girl who can survive in America. Me
Mhm.
being a valedictorian was one of my credential that he liked. But during the interview, when he asked me questions, I said no to most of it. Like, can you speak English or do you cook? Like those were not serving him well at all. But
Mhm.
he still said that he saw that there's a hope with this girl because she is capable, even though she doesn't have all these credentials, but she is valedictorian, which means she can do it if she is put in the right place. So the point of that story is that this, in a way, whatever tool I was collecting was helping me exit that reality because he became um, my handler, you can say, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who took me from that place
A
to a whole
sponsor of
different
this.
place. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, a sponsor because he brought me to LA. And even though it had to be arranged marriage, because it was interesting how, like, because everybody has to be in a different type of packaging depending on where you are in the world and what role playing are you doing.
Mhm.
But that's how I became an engineer, is because in that 1 hour interview, I only asked him one question, that can I continue my studies? And he said, yes, I like you to finish your engineering.
That's awesome. And so you did, but you also had a difficult way. You had a difficult path in front of you, even in LA. Continued difficult
Oh,
path.
very difficult path. Actually, now when I think about it, that what I did, because you get married to strange man that you don't know. And then you
Mm,
are in a place where you don't know the culture, don't know the people, don't know the language.
sure.
And and then he leaves every morning at 8 and doesn't come until 12 at night. And you are in the studio apartment with no bed, no place to put your clothes in. And you're wondering what you're going to do with your life. But you know that you have to make money because he's in a lot of debt. So that was my biggest, highest priority. And so it was kind of like, and I couldn't make a phone call to my parents because it was too expensive. So all of those things, like when I think about that, how I put myself in this extreme, like I think it's worse than Cinderella story when you really look at it from a certain perspective. But I had to be in that story to get the power that I needed, right? To kind of really provide me the fuel so I can fly,
Ha! You can not only fly, but
launch myself.
you're launching human landing systems on the moon. It's a-
I know. I had to land myself on Earth before I could land on Moon. But yes.
oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh, goodness gracious. But life is exciting. But yeah, when I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, after doing that, if I say that I can't do anything, then it's not going to work.
Let's go back a little bit to the moon. So, so thank you again for sharing this with the audience, because your story it begs for that, right? Like the context matters. Context matters. So, going to the moon. Let's talk about number one. What is the purpose? How about we start with that?
So I'm sure there's lots and lots of reasons, but the reason that are openly expressed and combined with my understanding makes sense is that the main reason is, of course, that always human consciousness always wants to learn how to live in other places other than Earth to kind of, because it's challenging, right? So when something is challenging, then it requires you to use all your faculty to actually make it happen. So going and living on a moon is a very challenging thing to do because moon is not really designed like an Earth for us to live there. But it is a treasure chest for a lot of learning and evolution because, first of all, the lunar regolith is very abundant.
Explain the lunar regolith?
Yeah, so regolith
Explain.
pretty much means that lunar sand, you can say lunar soil, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
regolith is the term that we use in our rocketry, and it has a little bit of a deeper connotation to it. Based on what I have understood is that the minerals that we have on moon is not available on Earth. And if we can start harnessing those minerals and resources, then it's going to actually enable us to create a technology that can help us to go to Mars.
We had a discussion I mentioned to you before the record with Rudy Shield, who's an astrophysicist. And he was close friends with Edgar Mitchell before he passed away. Edgar Mitchell being the sixth man on the moon, fifth or sixth man, I always forget.
Sixth person, yes.
Okay, so sixth.
Sixth.
And so he had this metaphysical experience. The listener knows this already through we shared it countless times. On the space capsule on the way back, he had a metaphysical experience, and then he wanted to keep exploring this. And so he went to NASA, or the head of NASA, or Werner von Braun, asking if he could explore this, and he was given the green light to canvas people around. So anyway, the point is, he goes, NASA was concerned specifically and mostly about the rocks that he collected, not about the change in consciousness that he experienced. And one of the stories that he told Rudy, and then Rudy told us on the podcast, was a story of an astronaut who, when on the moon, his consciousness became the consciousness of an elephant on the earth. And he was feeling what the elephant was feeling, seeing what the elephant was seeing, had the worries of the elephant. And this is something that NASA, he explained, was not interested, nor did not had nothing in their protocols to deal with.
Right. They definitely don't have protocols to deal with. That actually makes sense. Even like it's interesting because even after writing my book, The Quantum Being, and we had astronaut crew, the one that just did the recent expedition and the International Space Station, and we had this conference where I had capacity to ask them any questions, and I asked them some questions about our existence at subatomic level and how does that relate to when you are in a microgravity and so forth. So I asked a question that I thought that they would give me some answer based on more like a consciousness, but I could just see that they did not even have a faculty to understand my question, let alone answer my question. So what I'm saying is that the people who end up generally in a position to do a mission or be an astronaut or whatever, they are specifically chosen for a very specific requirement. And they usually don't encourage people like definitely me, who wants to completely break all the boxes and just completely go all over the place because it's very unpredictable for them to handle someone like me, right? So they usually choose people, and even like in leadership, I have worked in a corporate world and I could never become a leader because they just, I interviewed for leadership and for the most part, I would always get rejected because there's a recipe that they're looking for, like that. Can I rely on you?
Yeah, can you fit the mold for
Because,
that position? Yeah.
yeah, because to some extent, if you think about it, all of these positions and all of this role playing you do, it's like, you're playing a 5D chess, but people want you to be predictable so they can already know where you're going to be going, how far are you going to go, what are the possible things you can do.
Yeah.
And they don't like people who are not. So that makes sense for them that they didn't even want to They didn't want to acknowledge that. But then I can talk to you about having to feel the consciousness of elephant because it directly relates to a character in Star Trek that I'm extremely intrigued by.
Mm-hmm. Tell me.
And that character is called Q. The whole idea is that Q can be anything and everything. Q knows how to embody pretty much, and Q is everywhere. But Q is a representation of what we truly are in the spirit form.
You do coaching, and you called it, with me, you called it before the record, you had a quantum session.
Yes.
Is this, so do you do quantum coaching? Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I actually say quantum coaching because, just the way I am, right? I'm going to take you in all these different dimensions that you didn't even think about it. So generally my sessions are all about first understanding what the core reason you book me, right? For whatever time you did. And then what is the goal? And then I use the multidimensional aspect of our existence to get to that point. Like so that by the time the person is done, even in 30 minutes, you have an action for you that you didn't have before. And you understand why you have that action. So you can change your life for good. Because to me, when you change one thing, you change everything. And that is quantum physics.
So I had a read through your book, not as much as I wanted to, but I'm going to continue reading it. And yeah, one I think it was chapter 9 or 10. You were talking about photons and light, and you started off by talking about literally stepping into your light. What does that mean?
So it basically means that you have to acknowledge the fact that you have a light within you, right? Or they actually have proved it, right? Scientifically, it's been already proven by Japanese first in July 2009
Mm-hmm.
by performing the experiment with the special camera, right? That our cell emits light. We have light in our cell. It's so, it's invisible to our eyes, our naked eyes, but it does exist when you use a specific camera. So the thing is that light carries energy. So when you really look at the plant and how the plant needs the sunlight, right, to become vibrant, we are in the same way. That's why people who live in Seattle or people who live in places where they don't get a lot of sun, they tend to get depressed or they tend to get suicidal, right? So
Sure.
light interacts with us because light is needed for our survival and for our well-being. So when you understand the step into light, pretty much means that you have to acknowledge the fact that your light within you is the key factor for you to show up the best version of yourself in the world. So the more you are aware of your light, the more you do take action to enhance your light, because you get to choose. Like depending on what you eat, you're either enhancing your light or you are reducing your light. And all of those things you already have a faculty to feel, right? So when you eat something that makes you feel like, my God, it's like you're having an orgasm with the food, right? And you feel good and you feel one with the food, and you actually, right after eating it, you feel like your body actually accepted it. That is a good example of you stepping into your light. So stepping into your light pretty much means you use your intuition, you use your knowledge, you use your wisdom, you use your faculty, you use everything that you have understood up to this point in your existence and maximize it so you can keep on making the incredible fractal holographic reality for yourself.
So let me interrupt you in this, because I want you
Sure.
I want you to explain this a little bit more for blockheads like me. So
Okay.
I, I
Go
so
ahead.
I feel your words, and I want to understand it better. I know that
Of course.
when I go outside, when I go into a forest, when I'm near trees and I'm hearing and I'm listening to birds,
Yes.
I feel better. I always feel. I never. How about this? I never not feel better. So there's got to be something scientifically, an explanation scientifically that underlies all this. I get it that there
100%.
would be. Okay. So I want to know how that explanation manifests itself to what we decide about it. So I'm going to read something from a passage from your book, and because I have a question. So
Sure. Go ahead.
We're talking about, or you, we, look at me, you were talking about biophotons. I didn't even know those two words could be together. So you were talking about photons, and about the biological process at play. You said once we understand how to draw energy, we can learn to harvest the energy. So harvest is a word that I want to understand. How we process light energy within us plays a vital role in keeping our light shining. When I go shopping in person, such as going to the farmer's market, I let the food call me through its vibration and frequency.
Mhm.
Online shopping doesn't work for me since I use my intuition and feelings to attract the right kind of experience that can enhance my health and well-being. The food we eat, the water we drink, the air we inhale and exhale, and our thoughts all feed our minds. I understand this because I understand that when I eat good food, I feel better. So I understand using my intuition when I see food and I decide upon it. But what does it mean? Like, because these words are overused, and I know in your context it means something particular. You say, I let the food call me through its vibration and frequency.
Mhm. So, first of all,
You looked at me
every
like,
single thing.
yes, of course, but I
No.
want you to explain that to me.
Okay, so let's take some baby steps. So first
Sure.
thing you have to understand is that every single thing vibrates. Do you agree with that?
I agree. So let me explain why I think I agree with that. And I could be
Okay.
off because when I feel like when I feel good about something being in my space, so whether it's a person or a thing, it usually I can the feeling comes through. This is going to sound wacky. A sound that I cannot hear, and I believe that there's a sound I cannot hear because
That
I'm
is very
hearing it.
true.
I'm hearing it. I know that I'm hearing it, but not with my ears.
Exactly.
Is that
You
what it
got
is?
it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's it. So right there is your answers, right? So we can, we have all these five senses, right? And those senses are good because, of course, you're looking at the food. So that way you get the color, right? You are, you can't hear the vibration, but it's there. But then you can smell it sometime, right? If it has a smell.
Sure.
And when you touch it, then you can feel it, right? So those are five senses, but you feel it in your heart. But the thing about being directed to go there, so when you're in a store, like I usually go into the store, and of course, you have a goal. Like I always have a list because we all have lives. So of course I have a list and I know that I have to get certain thing. But then I also love to make sure that I kind of give myself a little bit of a permission to be a child in this playground because this is a hunger game we're playing, right? Now I'm in dialing this channel of being at the grocery store. So of course I want to make the most of it. So I have a list and I'm walking, and I even like with people and stuff, I run into someone that I feel like complimenting them or whatever. I do interact because I'm like, we're not here. This is not like these are human beings. These are fruits and vegetables. It's a good interaction playtime. And when you are in that type of energy, what happens is that you open the door where if you hear something or if something happened, then you are being directed to go there. So there are ways that you get directed. It doesn't have to be necessarily the food itself, but let's say somebody spilled something somewhere and you got the attention and you feel like, you know what, I need to go in that area and check it out. And then right there you are and you're like, oh my God, this stands out. Like for me, like it's interesting because as soon as I go like any rooms or any places, I always get myself like my awareness parks itself in sometime unusual places. And I'm like, why am I noticing this, right? Like like it's almost like when you're driving a car. And I mean, when I drive a car and I see nameplate, and just 2 days ago I saw the nameplate, and the nameplate said soul, SOUL, soul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, and then what was the other number? I don't remember. I need to think about it. But it was just really incredible what I saw. Things like that, right? So the point is that when you see it, you need to be in more like a child type of space where you say, you know what? I want to know more about it. So then you go. But that's how, when you start. So this is not just the grocery store for me. I use that as an example. But I like to like use this consciousness tuned up in every aspect of your life. When you start doing that, you're going to be very aware because the more you use the muscle of your awareness, basically, which is your light, which is your intuition, it's something that kind of combines all the other facets that you already have and gives it more power. So it's kind of, I mean, your light is your consciousness.
Well, you said your light or your intuition. That's interesting.
Yeah. And you can, yeah, because it's all the same, right? Because I mean, intuition is where we can dial in a channel that is beyond all the other channels like senses or feeling, right? Because intuition actually is the one that doesn't need to be explained.
I think that's a problem with all of us is that we all know what intuition is. We've all been children, and we all ignore it to an
That's,
extent.
oh, big
All of
time.
us.
All of us do. But the thing is that the more you start using it, and when you actually ignore it, you're going to actually start feeling it that, because I get a lots of, time this, that I should do this, but then I let it go, right? Because I'm either busy, distracted, or I'm like, it's not going to create
Yeah.
any impact. But then you see down the line when you've ignored it, that the impacts are always severe, just like doing anything, right? Like if you can catch, like when we make a rocket, the quicker we catch all the problems, it's cheaper, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then it
Mistakes
becomes more and
cost
more
money.
expensive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Because now, now you're like, you've already done all of this work and now you're saying that we have to fix this. So it's kind of like that. So intuition, and I'll give you an example of intuition, right? So yesterday I came back from my trip from NASA KSC and I have been eating out. So I knew I was very aware of my body, not happy. And my son wanted to eat like the food that he knows he's not supposed to eat, but he said, I really want to eat the fast food. And he was like, I really would love to just have So I was like, I was just weighing my options. So of course, every time if I get him fast food, generally, I kind of can easily get it for myself, but I didn't. And I said, I'm not going to get the fast food because I'm going to be very health conscious. But I said, I'm just going to get French fries because I really felt like it, right? So now this is what happens. So I order a French fries for me. And then when we come home, the French fries wasn't there for me because the guy forgot to pack it. And then my son was like, Mom, you can share with me. And I said, no. I said, this actually means that I wasn't supposed to eat it. I wasn't even listening to my intuition. And now my team is saying, we're going to make it really obvious to you that you should listen to yourself. So I actually was saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for protecting me from myself.
You told me when we talked about death, you said, I'm going to read it here. It will be fun when you die. You'll be liberated into the light. I've never heard anybody say fun and die in the same sentence.
I know. I personally think, and of course, this is all me saying all these things, God knows how much, but I do believe that, because especially with all the things that I have heard from people, but even like I never had that fear of death from the day one when I was aware of my consciousness, because I always felt that, just like you said, that the astronaut was able to feel the elephant, I almost feel that, okay, so there are two possibilities, right? One possibility is that when we die, we're completely done, right? Like we are completely done and there's no awareness, there's no consciousness, there's no existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then we are really done. So, I mean, there's nothing to worry. There's nothing to lose. There's nothing to gain. It's completely neutral, right? If you think about it.
Sure.
So that's one possibility, because I know people who believe in that. While one life to live, and when you die, you're done, and end of the story. The other possibility is that you die and you exist in some other form. And my belief is that if you exist in any other form, the very fact that you get to see that side of the story that you haven't seen so far, that to me is exciting. And it is fun because of that curiosity. Again, see, you have to have that childlike curiosity in all your existence. And I do believe that if you don't exist where I am right now, then I exist in some other form. And then whatever that form is, ultimately, whether it is fun or whether it is not fun, it's also a perception. So might as well make fun out of it.
Well, if you believed that nothing existed after your body died, do you believe that that's what you'd be given? Nothing?
Well, if somebody says that you stop existing after you're dead, then that to me is kind of, because everything that we have right now is because we're existing. If you don't even exist, then we won't be even aware of the existence. So then it almost cancels each other out, right? There's nothing there.
So by that, you can say by believing anything, you're already creating it.
That is true. And you just got muted, but yes, I agree. And yeah, I do believe that, we do exist in different form. And I also believe that what we tap into as a memory depends on what form we pick. Because memory is the only reason we actually, memory is what we tap into, right? Memory is the only reason we actually have a continuation. If you think about it, that if every nanosecond you forget who you are and what you are and where you are, then you would be pretty much living in that Groundhog Day every nanosecond, and you wouldn't even know that you had a life.
So, do we create then our own illusion?
I think that because there's a consensus reality involved, because we are interacting with a lot of other energies, we definitely affect our own illusion, yes. I wouldn't say that we create it, but we affect it.
Okay, so I want to read something else because maybe this will help clarify it or clarify my question too, and you tell me. So,
Okay.
what was it? It's chapter six, mirror, mirror. Is it chapter 6?
Yes.
Um, so we are the. So this is you. You start off the chapter this way. We are the common denominator in all of our relationships. So that makes sense. Mathematically, that makes sense. The people in our lives are mere reflections of us. We don't see things. So I skipped through here because this is you now quoting somebody else, but I highlighted it. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. So that's what I think that's what I meant by, because I was influenced by what I read here.
Right. So so let's rephrase that. So basically, we are here to comprehend ourselves, right? To understand ourselves, which is pretty much what I'm highlighting in that chapter. And the only way we understand ourselves is through experiences, right? And the experience can come in many forms. It can come in the form of people, or it can come in the form of you experiencing your own body, or you experiencing your own thoughts, you experiencing your own, emotions, right? So it can come in any form, whether there's other people involved or not. It's also kind of, you get to choose all that. But yes. So I agree that we are working through all the things that's hidden from us in our subconscious through experiences. And we do get to select what type of experiences we should be availing to go to the next step of evolution. So, like, I'll give an example that when I'm coaching one of my client is actually a doctor and very intelligent and all of that, but she's struggling with the relationship with her mother, for example. And it's, for example, in that particular case, like when people are caregiver and you have always been a caregiver and you've always played that role and you believe that that's the only way you can show the love to that other person, I kind of switch the role there because I'm like that. It's pretty obvious you love your mother. It's pretty obvious you would love to spend time with her. But do you always want to show up in a caregiver role, or do you want to do something more fun with her? So you see my point? As soon as I said that in my coaching, because she's an intelligent woman, she's like, oh my God, nobody ever said that to me. Nobody even made me think that way. And I said, yes, because at the end of the day, you decide how you want to show up and how do you want to interact with the other person. If the goal is to show love to the other person, why not you do it where you feel good at the same time the other person's feeling good, right? So the point of this whole thing is that yes, we do get to decide how we are going to interact with and whom we are going to interact with and what we are learning in the process.
Why are you doing this? Like you're building. I'm going to say it again here. You're building an unprecedented human landing system for the moon. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing
Oh,
quantum coaching? Why are you writing this book that's got nothing to do with building rockets?
It's because this is like something that I embody, right? This is like something that I am. It's almost like as long as I exist, I have to be who I am at the core level. And who I'm at the core level is someone who wants to share all of this that I have within me in
And what
whatever
happens
form
if you
I
don't?
can.
What happens if you stop sharing? Like, who are you without
Well,
sharing that?
well, it excites me to share. I mean, for me, I share this to anyone that comes in my life. Like, I had a I have like person coming for lawn care, whatever. I would ask them how was their day, and then they would say, that my daughter is struggling with this, and there comes something that. So what I'm saying is, I do this all day, all night with anyone and everyone. It doesn't have to be a podcast or a book. That's just who I am.
It's so odd for me. This is why we reached out to you, because it's such an odd pairing between your work, and this is shame on me, right? Because I call it odd, because your work is so left brain oriented. It is beyond my understanding. Um, but where you're really happy is exploring the non left side of your brain.
Exactly. You know why? Because and in a way they kind of complement each other, because on the left side, I have always like a lot of parameters and lots of structure, lots of boundary, and then goal. So it kind of helps with all of that. And in this playground, I get to pretty much question the question. And I love that, because if I wouldn't have had this, I wouldn't, because someone like me can never be able to do just that and be happy, because that is almost like limiting my life.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I get it. If I could be bold in saying that your work, your professional work, your vocation has helped you channel those tendencies that you've always had, those kind of driven,
That's
bullheaded
true.
tendencies. I mean, you're a perfectionist, so I suspect as a coder, that's, and as a person who's being paid not to make mistakes or to avoid them, it fits really well into that. But that is not the whole you, because you've said it twice now, and I wanted to ask, when you said when you were first aware of your consciousness, I mean, that's something I'm going to believe you, but that's a heavy thing to say. And if I were to take those words and internalize them, I wouldn't even know how to answer that for myself. But you explain that for yourself as a little girl, as a preteen, aware of your consciousness, trying to make something different of your circumstances. Well, I don't even know if there's a question in there. But it's made my uncovering about you much more fascinating, I think.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, no, it's not even meant to be a compliment. It's maybe it's a reminder that for me, to be more conscious, more aware of my consciousness. Because going into robot mode, there it is. I think maybe this is the question. Going into robot mode is an easy thing to do. Going into, what am I going to do for my school? What am I going to do for my career? How am I going to afford a family? How am I going to support my family? How am I going to keep everybody safe? Those sorts of thoughts are always front and center every day. And when you were explaining the story about being in the shopping mall and taking in all those senses and being childlike and talking to people, that's in all of us, and we don't take the time to do it. So maybe that's the answer to the question that I wanted to ask you. It's like,
Because then you become an NPC.
oh my God. Oh my God. I was told, you just said that to me as if you've told me this before, and you haven't, for the record, for the listener. Last night uh I was told by somebody that I was not MPC. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. She goes, well, you'll figure it out. And then I remembered that only because this morning I had a conversation with a woman named Clarissa. And I recalled that story, and I told her that story. I said, you know what? I have to remind myself to look up what MPC is. And here we go. The third time in less than 24 hours, I hear it again. What is
So
MPC?
do you know what that is?
No, what is it? What is it?
It's a non-playing character. So the NPC is someone who stays in the background in the video games, because your job is to actually be the zombie or be the robot you just explained yourself to be.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to use this. I had no idea. I feel really old. I had no idea. Okay. This has been fun. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
I'm not going to promise, but one more question. What is greatness to you?
What is what?
What is greatness to you?
Greatness.
Yeah.
I think greatness is love for all there is. Even, I mean, all part of you, basically. And it kind of has its, like, to me, greatness is something that goes beyond what it is. It is very, I don't even know the words for it. That's how I see it, actually. Something that goes, just doesn't have any boundary at all.
Like your experience after death?
Oh, yeah, you're right. That makes sense. That's a great answer. I like that. I didn't
Look
even
at
think
that.
about that.
Are we going to end off on a podcast where a rocket scientist tells me that I make sense? Oh my God.
Yes,
It's,
you do. I
it's like
love
a
that.
it's like a
And it's
win.
funny because you actually helped me, because I already told you how, like the whole death thing, and then you almost reminded me. And that's what greatness is actually. And greatness makes it more exciting when it's shared by
Mhm.
another conscious being, because
Ah.
we all we love when we make a Vesica Pisces, right? And that's what it is. It's the union, right, of two um, like-minded consciousness, something along the line.
Oh, I'm willing to explore that. Maybe we'll do a second record on that.
Sure.
Shehnaz,
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for your time here. You have good energy, man. I'm sure you've been told this. Keep it up. That's good stuff.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will definitely do that.